Hey, so in this video I want to introduce the Hotkey Manager in Houdini. Now just to get started, remember that when we press the D key in the viewport, that is going to bring up the display options. Similarly, if we press the D key in the network view, that is going to bring up the network view display options. So that key is context sensitive to the pane. Alright, let's go to Edit and left click on Hotkeys. This will bring up the Hotkey Manager. The left pane in this window will list the context. The center pane is the actions. For example, it will list the tools such as the Move tool, for example, the hotkey assigned to it, and it will also list the context. The pane to the right describes the currently selected action with a list of hotkeys assigned to that action, and that is where we can make assignments or modifications to the hotkey for that action. Okay, notice that we also have a virtual keyboard at the bottom of this window. And as you navigate through the different contexts, the virtual keyboard will update to show whether a key is assigned in a context or whether it is unassigned. We can click on a key on the virtual keyboard to see the assignments on that key. This will show the key plus any modifiers in the different contexts. We can see the key is assigned to display options in Houdini/panes/geometry viewer and also in Houdini panes network editor. You can toggle this keyboard display at the bottom here by clicking this button. You can also search, so you can click here to filter. You can search by text. Click this button, go to text, or by key. So here you can press a key, press D for example. And now in the actions in selected context panel, we can see we have display options here, for example, in the panes, geometry and viewers, and down here also in the panes/network editor. Now sometimes you can have a combination that is going to move the typing character away, such as tab for example. So here, let's say we want to search for the combination shift tab. So I can press and hold shift and then I can click this drop down and then we get shift tab for example. So I can click on that. And then we see here in the geometry viewer that is going to branch off a new operation. So that is what that key does. Alright, let's quickly talk about this virtual keyboard again. We can see that the keys have different colors. So the keys assigned in the selected context are going to be solid, so the darker color. Keys assigned in the lower, so more specific context have these light stripes on them. Hotkeys assigned in higher or more generalized context have those darker stripes on them. And then the keys that are available and so not assigned in the current context are a solid light color. Now, a hotkey in a higher level context will be overridden by the same hotkey in a lower, more specific context. We can also press the Shift, Control, or Alt modifier keys on this virtual keyboard. For example, Shift and Tab, and that will also bring up those assignments, Shift Tab, as we can see here. One more example, let's say we do Shift W. So instead of typing that in, we can click on Shift here and then click W. And now we can go here to all of the assignments. So Shift W, for example, is going to toggle shaded and wire shaded in the geometry viewer. Alright, that was a quick overview of the Hotkey Manager. Now let's look at how we can actually change a key. For example, in the network here, we can press and hold the Y key and then we can drag to cut our wires. I'll just put that back into the merge node, bring up the Hotkey Manager. Now we can search for cut here, doing a text search, or we can again go down here to panes, network editor, and we can see the cut wires mode and the key that is assigned to that. So let's say I want to assign the C key to that instead because it's closer to my left hand. I don't have to stretch each time. Again, here in the network editor, click on that. So if I click on the C key, for example, that will bring up the shortcuts that are associated with the C key. In here, it lists the C key as assigned to the color palette. Alright, I will navigate back to that cut wires mode where the Y key is assigned. I will double click in here to assign a new key. We get this warning that the C key is already assigned to something else. So I'll just click to remove the other assignment. Just double click in here again and make sure that C is assigned to this cut wires mode. Then I will remove Y. And for demonstration purposes, I'll just set Y here for the color palette. So search for color palette again, and I'll assign Y to that. Click apply and accept. Now in the network editor, C is going to bring up the cut tool and Y is going to bring up the color palette. Okay, so that is how we can find keys that are already assigned. You may have to search for those, or you can just go straight to the key that you want to assign to, and if there's a conflict, then Houdini will warn you for that. And we can also just navigate to the tool that we want to assign a hotkey for. So for example, I will navigate to a polygon, and let's say we want to assign a shortcut to one of these tools for interactive polygonal modeling. Let's go with the edge loop tool, for example. Now there's a shortcut that I'll show you in a moment, but just to begin with here, we can right click on a tool to get the context menu. So right click on the tool, select Edit tool, then in the Hotkeys tab, in the Scene Viewer section, click on Edit. That's going to bring up the Hotkey Manager again in the relevant context. And we have the edge loop action selected here, so we can double click to add a shortcut. I'll just choose Alt-L for demonstration purposes because I know that nothing is assigned to that at the moment. Alright, apply and accept. And back in the viewport, I will press Alt-L. I get the tool. The polysplit node gets dropped down in the network view and I can place that edge loop. Now there's also a shortcut for that, whether it is the shelf tools or the tools to the left here, for example, such as the move tool. If we hover over that, we can see the T key is assigned to that. So we can press Ctrl Alt Shift and then a left mouse button click on that particular tool, and that's going to bring up the Hotkey Manager again in the relevant context with that tool selected. We can see we have the move tool in the geometry viewer and the T key is assigned to that. Again, let's say we want to assign a hotkey to the poly extrude, for example. Ctrl Shift Alt and left click on that. Right, so this also works with the shelf tools. Alright, let's say we want to revert some of these settings. So the color palette, for example, I can click on this cog button here, and then I can go to reset command. That is going to restore the selected action to its factory defaults. Or we can go to reset context, and that is going to restore all actions in the selected context to the factory hotkeys. Or we can go to reset all. We can save these, we can export these hotkeys as well, and we can accept and apply when we are done. Alright, and that is a quick introduction to the Hotkey Manager in Houdini. I have this Houdini Essential Hotkey list that I've recently made some updates to, such as the shortcut that I talked about in this video, Ctrl Alt Shift and left mouse button, clicking on an item in the UI to bring up that item in the Hotkey Manager, with a few other minor updates as well. You can get this for free on my Gumroad page. And that is going to wrap up this video. I'll see you next time.